I have played my fair share of board games, and I was wondering what the process is to make my own board game. So I thought, hey, let's take a guy who has zero experience in board game design and see if we can make one. See if I can make one. I think my goal is going to be if I can get one print run of a board game, modest, let's just say a modest print run of a board game, something that I could show in my hands and say, hey guys, I did it, and document my process. So the first thing we have to do is come up with a concept for our board game, a real concept of what's our game going to be about. I had bounced out a couple of ideas before the video. I thought about a game that would combine chess and Magic, where you would build your deck beforehand, spawn in your pieces like chess pieces, and they would move on a board the way the chess pieces would, like a pawn would move like a pawn, and it would be cheaper, and then you knights and rooks, and with the goal of killing your opponent's king. I also thought about maybe doing a game that was called Objection. In Objection, you would play as a defense lawyer or a prosecutor, and you would try to play cards into evidence, and then you'd have a card called Objection that would block your opponent's card. I always liked the Mega Man Battle Network series. In the Mega Man Battle Network series, you would control Mega Man on a 3x6 grid. A 3x3 grid would belong to you, a 3x3 grid would belong to your opponent. You guys would move around and use battle chips to get special attacks. And if you could bring your opponent's life to 0, you would win. I like using grid paper because it's obviously a great way of laying out the board game. And when I say I have no experience with board game design, no published experience. I've dabbled in a couple of board game ideas, but I've not pursued it seriously. So I'm always open to suggestions on how to streamline or improve my process here, but we'll put this for the middle line, this thicker, darker one. And then, kind of in the style of the Mega Man Battle Network games, we'll use some red and blue to just show the difference in the size here. Use my ghost lines of that. So then we will kind of just give these a little bit of a red shade here. This isn't just to, this is just for visual clarity here. Let's just do this. Okay. Now we'll knock out this other side, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what I have in mind. I already know that in theory, at least, this is a good game system because I love the mechanics in the Battle Network. But thankfully, you cannot copyright mechanics. So I don't think I'm infringing on any copyright here. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not, because Capcom really doesn't use this anymore. Imagine developing a whole system, copywriting it, and then not using it. That'd be silly, right? Warner Brothers. Anyway, the way I'm imagining this is this would be kind of your map. And then you'd probably have another kind of outline, so your board would fold out. Okay. Something like this. So you'd have this perimeter around the board. On this side, you'd have arrows pointing this way. This is going to change based off of card size. And let's just say over here, you would kind of have this kind of symbol here. So what I'm thinking of is you would put a card here on top of this here. So let's just kind of use an arrow here to show that you would put a card here. Now, this is the size of a magic card or a Pokemon card or something. And on the top, you would have probably your artwork and what kind of attack it was. You'd have that kind of information. So, and then in the bottom, you would have an arrow, an diagonally pointed arrow. So it could either point up, down, left, or right. Or it might have an X. Let's just say that it points up. So then you would place a card here, and then the cards would move in this direction every turn. So in the first turn, you would put a card here, and then second turn, you would move the card over here, and you'd put your next card down. When the card hit this spot here, it would activate. So let's just say my crude drawing of a gun here. If you did a gun and it would just have a symbol to show that it is like a straight attack. So no matter where you're at, it attacks directly in front of you, and it would have like a number, let's just say 2 for fun. And it had an an up symbol. So I think because we usually read on the West here, we read left to right and then up to down. So you would first attack, and these would activate at the same time. So if your guy were here and your opponent was here, I wonder if maybe now that I'm thinking about it, the card and the movement needs to be on top. Anyway, we'll talk about this. Okay, we'll play test this out. But anyway, let's just say your guy's here and the opponent's here. When it activates, I'm thinking we're gonna have to move first. Anyway, then the attack goes off, and if the attack can hit the opponent, it would do damage to them. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and just draw little pawns here just to kind of represent this. I'm kind of one of the reasons I decided to go with this game is because I thought that it would be, I could just print a game that required like a deck of cards, and that was all. But I don't think that would actually be the experience. I want a game that would have some miniatures in it, so I'd have to go through the sculpting process. And I'm not a 3D modeler, so I'm either going to have to learn it, or I'm going to have to hire that out to somebody. And regardless, all the graphic design work's going to have to be hired out. But this is we'll work on it. But anyway, so let's just say now that I've kind of talked through it, I really think the movement's going to have to be first. So I wonder if the movement's going to have to be on top. Okay, so let's just talk about that. So if we do our card, let's just do a bigger version of this. Let's go this size for a card idea. Straight lines are hard, guys. Hard because I'm using my wrist and not my... Okay, so I'm wondering if maybe the movement's going to have to be up here. So let's just kind of demonstrate what things we can have for movement. So we can have an arrow pointing this way, an arrow pointing this way, up, down, left, right, A, B, start, and then an X. So you don't move at all. So then we have that. So that would be like here, or maybe it might even be up a square. Maybe it's a square up here. I don't know. We'll just what I'll do. I'm overthinking this. Let's just talk about it. So it'll be like this. So, and then let's just say maybe a picture of the attack. By the way, since this is called AI Battlers, we're going to call these cards prompts. But let's just show a gun, a very crudely drawn gun, and then what we'll do is we'll do a 2, we'll put a 2 here for the attack symbol. Kind of an explosive star here, as bad as that is. And then we'll show kind of a silhouette on what it does. So this will be a line. That way, if it's like a shot, it'll do this way. And then you can even put like a range. So you could put like a 3, saying that it only takes 3 spaces. Or you could do a like a sword symbol, and you could have it do something like this to show. Or you could even have it show the square directly in front of the guy. So you could use any of those symbols here to show what kind of attack it is. And then you could also have movement cards that are just movement cards. And then the other thing too is I think it'd be cool to have a couple of cards that would let you put your card face down until it was revealed. That way there would still be a little bit of guessing and strategy. You obviously want to have your character sheet. So let's just do this, and it would have kind of a picture over here, and then it would have kind of maybe like stats over here. So you'd probably go with, I've already drawn that, but a heart. And then for how much life it has. And I kind of, with 2-player games, usually the idea is to keep them short. There are some examples of some fun 2-player games out there that are very long, but usually you want these to be short. So let's just say 5 lives. And you'd obviously want a couple of special abilities too to make each AI fighter feel different. AI. And then I think what would be cool is, so you'd have a deck, right? And the deck would have you'd have unique cards. That'd be the other thing you'd want to show here, is some symbols. So you could put like, oh, this guy is maybe like a fire user, so he has like this little fire symbol to show that he can use any cards that have these. So you could put these symbols here to show if it doesn't have his name on it. So let's just call this like if you had a guy called Boogeyman. So if you had an AI called like Boogeyman, then you could have some unique Boogeyman cards. So you would have cards that would say Boogeyman, but then also like Boogeyman would be he'd be like a spooky guy. So you could put like a skull for some symbols for him to show, hey, these are spooky cards. Or you could also have like common cards too. So yeah, you would be able to build your deck out of these different options. Regardless, I'm not going to get into this part yet because this is deck building and you'd want to come up with cards that said things. So I think what we would do to start out with is I need to create a prototype. And that's going to be our next episode, is me creating a prototype. Showing you guys, okay, I'm going to come up with a bigger piece of paper that'll have this grid on it. It won't be to scale, it'll kind of be about this size. But then we can play on it, and I'll pull out some generic pawns just to get a feel for how the game plays. So join me next time as I actually come up with some prototypes, and we will play test it to see what we think about the playtest. So for those who don't know, what I've heard multiple people say when it comes to board game design, playtest as soon as possible to see what breaks. So I'm hoping to playtest this by episode 3, because episode 2 I'll just show you guys just some ways of coming out with components for playtesting, and then we'll playtest it and I will take some notes on what I think needs to be improved. Feel free to leave feedback in the comments. The thing about making board games is you can't get married to certain ideas. You have to be willing to throw out ideas that you love if they disrupt the game. So I think this is a cool beginning, but we'll see what happens. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take the initiative and roll out.